This woman witnessed her husband being killed by a gangster who then took his own life. Afterward, they dug a large hole and threw both bodies into it, but no one knew she was still alive. Her name is Brenner, a soldier trained in elite combat skills. Her husband, Dylan, was a police officer. They were on their way to vacation somewhere, but as they were driving, a man in a truck suddenly made inappropriate comments about Brenner and rudely overtook them. After a long drive, they stopped at a restaurant to rest. While Dylan went to the bathroom, Brenner sat alone at a table outside. At that moment, the man from the truck, Butch, appeared again and approached Brenner, starting to harass her once more. This time he was even more aggressive, using vulgar language to provoke her. Dylan had just stepped out of the bathroom, and immediately the two began exchanging heated words. Things were about to spiral out of control when an elderly woman in the restaurant stepped in, standing between them and pulling them apart. She looked at Brenner and Dylan, smiled, and said that the townspeople weren't used to seeing such cute couples like them, then apologized on behalf of Butch. Dylan thanked her for intervening in time and gently expressed his gratitude to the woman. The couple then continued driving to find a beautiful spot in the forest where they could camp for the night. As soon as they began settling in, a female police officer appeared and struck up a conversation with Brenner. The officer warned that the locals might be a bit strange and not very friendly toward outsiders, so they should be cautious if they plan to camp in the area. Grateful for the advice, the couple decided to go for a hike instead of staying to camp. After the police officer left, the couple continued walking. Dylan asked his wife whether they should turn left or right, and Brenner replied that they should turn left. As they followed that direction, it suddenly started to rain. Out of nowhere, they discovered a small cabin and decided to take shelter inside. They romantically talked about the weather, enjoying the warm moment together. However, while Dylan was savoring the romantic atmosphere, Brenner began exploring the cabin. When she entered another room, she discovered a hidden compartment. As she opened it, she was shocked to find a large stash of ammunition inside, and a wave of fear immediately washed over her. Immediately, Brenner called Dylan to check if anything outside seemed unusual. Dylan also felt uneasy, and they both decided that the best option was to leave as soon as possible. However, just as they were about to leave, Butch suddenly attacked from behind, knocking them unconscious with the butt of his gun. When they woke up, they found themselves tied up in a room. Butch continued to brutally torture Dylan, while forcing Brenner to witness the psychological torment. Desperation and fear overwhelmed her. Then, one of Butch's henchmen approached and informed him that Dylan was actually a police officer, making the situation even more dire. Butch panicked for a moment, then walked into the room, looked directly at Dylan, and confessed that he didn't know he was a police officer, apologizing for what he had done. "I need to apologize to you both," he said, but right after that, Butch drew his gun and coldly shot both of them. He ordered his men to dispose of the bodies, and they dug a deep hole, throwing the bodies of Dylan and Brenner into it. We are then taken to a flashback, where Brenner is in the process of training to become a police officer. The scene reveals that she is not an ordinary woman, but a strong, powerful warrior, someone any enemy would fear. We return to the present, where Brenner wakes up after all the others have left. It turns out the bullets didn't kill her, they only grazed her, leaving a large wound and causing her to bleed. When she regains consciousness, she immediately checks on her husband. Seeing that he's dead, Brenner carefully covers his body with small branches. She returns to their campsite, filled with pain and sorrow. She blames herself for his death, remembering that it was she who suggested this journey, leading to a fatal mistake. Recalling her true identity, she decides that the enemy cannot be allowed to live. She will avenge her husband's death by taking them all down. She quickly grabs an axe and starts walking, determined to carry out her plan for revenge. Meanwhile, we see Butch returning to his mother's house, where he and his children continue to harass and bully a woman. With his brutish nature, grabs her from behind and kisses her as she struggles to resist. The locals live in fear of Butch and his family's brutal actions. They have kidnapped women and done whatever they pleased. Then, Butch's mother appears, telling him to eat quickly because she has work for him to do. At that moment, Brenner has crafted a sharp weapon from wood and swiftly attacks, killing one of Butch's henchmen. Clearly, she is not pleased with having to carry out these brutal actions. After killing the first man and disposing of his body, she disappears into the forest. A while later, Brenner continues her mission, finding a way to eliminate another man and severing the leg of another. However, instead of killing him, she watches him drag himself away, as if granting him a mercy, allowing him to escape her pursuit. Afterward, Brenner sets a fire, burning down an important cabin of Butch's, causing a massive explosion. Immediately after, we are introduced to Sheriff Hobbs, a man with a gun, who is listening to the echoing explosion and searching for the cause of the incident. Meanwhile, both Butch and his mother hear the explosion. Butch sees smoke rising from the direction of his cabin, a sense of unease creeping over him. His mother immediately orders Butch to go check it out. As he enters the forest, he discovers one of his men badly injured from Brenner's attack. He quickly helps his injured friend into the truck and drives off. Later, we see Brenner lying quietly in the back of her truck. When Butch returns and brings the bad news to his mother about the deaths of several of their men, she erupts in a fury. Not only is she angry, but she also scolds and slaps him for causing all this trouble. She orders Butch to find the outsiders, knowing that they need a stronger resource. Amy's mother has an extensive network, with plenty of information and resources at her disposal. She meets with an old friend, a bookworm, and asks him to check Brainer's records. As the man looks through the files, he realizes that Brainer is not an ordinary woman, but had served in the military, which shocks her mother. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hobbs enters the woods and discovers the body of one of Butch's men. He immediately contacts the command center to report the bodies found at the scene. Meanwhile, Brenner continues preparing in the forest, carefully setting traps to deal with the ones hiding in the area. At this moment, Sheriff Hobbs' men have arrived at the scene, where they discover the body. One of the officers reports that the body belongs to a member of Mother's group. He reveals that the entire forest is their mother's control, and every action in the area is carried out under her orders. Everyone in the region calls her mother, and she owns all the land. The sheriff, feeling concerned about her power, requests a direct meeting with this powerful woman. Immediately, a girl working in the command center informs Mother that Sheriff Hobbs is on his way to meet her. It turns out that this girl is also one of the people on Mother's payroll. A group of the sheriff's men arrives to meet Mother and reports the bodies they found in the forest. However, Mother does not reveal anything about the incident involving her men getting into trouble in the woods. She even pretends as if someone had attacked her people. Instead, Mother continues to insist that the man they found in the forest had committed suicide. Although the sheriff clearly realizes she is lying, he does not argue, silently leaving with his men. That night, Mother and her children mourned the loss of their close friend, drunk and eventually falling asleep. Butch woke up, but too intoxicated to realize what was happening. He walked in, and Brenner was there, waiting. Immediately, she struck, slashing his throat to avenge her husband's death. She watched him struggle, gasping for breath, until he finally collapsed the next morning. Brenner remained hidden in the shadows, as one of Mother's men dragged a girl into a room and locked her inside. Brenner realized she wasn't the only one imprisoned here, there were many other girls as well. Feeling sympathy for them, Brenner decided to help them escape this hell. Brenner sneaked into the room, trying to free the girls who were imprisoned, but they were too scared to move. Eventually, one of them screamed in warning, causing an armed man to rush in and start shooting at the group. One girl was hit and died instantly. However, Brenner showcased her superior combat skills and quickly dispatched the man in a highly efficient manner. Afterward, Brenner led a girl named Emily into the forest to hide. Meanwhile, Mother received news that Butch was dead and all the girls had escaped. She was devastated, unable to maintain her composure at the loss of her son. She ordered her men to search for Brenner, capture her, and gather all the men and hounds to begin the hunt. In the forest, one of Mother's men discovered Brenner's hideout, but he couldn't escape the trap she had set and was killed immediately. Another man appeared, but Brenner quickly shot him dead. That night, Brenner and Emily sat together, talking and enjoying the peaceful moment. Emily confided in Brenner that she was pregnant, but felt terrified of death. She knew that if her mother found her, no one knew what she would do to her. Brenner gently reassured her, promising to protect her and help her escape so she could start a new life. Meanwhile, Mother's special man, Hunk, led a pack of hunting dogs into the forest to continue the hunt for Brenner. The next morning, Emily was captured, but Brenner arrived just in time and eliminated her captors. At the same time, Sheriff Hobbs was also at the scene. One of Hunk's men shot Hobbs in the leg, but Brenner quickly noticed and shot the assassin dead. Afterward, Brenner and Emily helped Hobbs, getting him to safety. Brenner warned the sheriff that they needed to mislead the enemy, or they would keep showing up at these locations, making it even harder to deal with them. Then, Brenner and Emily decided to leave their hiding place. They followed the creek and eventually reunited with the female officer who had warned Brenner and her husband earlier. They sought her help, and she told them to get in the car. Exhausted, Emily and Brenner sat in the car and quickly fell asleep. However, when they woke up, they found themselves surrounded by Mother and her men. It turned out the female officer had been secretly working for Mother all along, taking money from her. The group began to torture them, and during this, Emily confessed to Mother that she was pregnant with Butch's child. Upon hearing this, Mother immediately ordered her men to take Emily to another room. Meanwhile, Brenner was tied up in a cell that had been prepared for her torture. However, Emily secretly brought in some food and unexpectedly killed the guard. She quickly untied Brenner, and together they walked into the room where Mother and her men were gathered. A fierce battle erupted, and Brenner relentlessly took down each of them. In the midst of this, Mother pressed a knife to Emily's throat, demanding that Brenner drop her weapon. In the tense struggle, a man suddenly attacked Brenner from behind, while Mother quickly slashed Emily's throat. Brenner managed to kill the man who attacked her, but when she reached Emily's side, she painfully realized that the poor girl was already dead. The scene then shifts to 3 months later, where Mother is sitting in the garden and receives a message reading Judgment Day. At that moment, she is shot in the head. Brenner, camouflaged in the forest, witnesses the scene and, after completing revenge for her husband, walks away. The film ends. Thank you for watching.